Being a marketer's no sweat. You just have to manage dozens of channels, launch hundreds of campaigns, score thousands of leads, and okay, fine, it's a lot of sweat. Unless you have HubSpot's AI-powered marketing tools to help you do all that and more. Get started at HubSpot.com/marketers.
Hello and welcome to the Trail Daddy Podcast. At long last, the Portland Trail Blazers have returned to regular season play, and we are back right along with them. I am Dave Deckard, managing editor of Blazers Edge, and we are here to talk about your favorite team and mine, the Portland Trail Blazers, of course. And they, at the time of this taping, have won, count it, one game under their belts against the Golden State Warriors, and such an exciting affair it was. We're going to talk about that, what's new for the season, what might be coming up ahead. And you know what? Let's start with the most exciting part. Everybody loves new toys, and the Trailblazers have one in small forward Denny Avdia. And he had a spectacular outing on Wednesday night against the Warriors. He started along with Toumani Camara. There was injuries to Shaedon Sharpe and a couple other people. The starting lineup may fluctuate as we go along, but it's for sure that having Denny and Toumani in the starting lineup helped the defense, at least for the first few minutes of the game, and showed some exciting new things about Portland's approach this year. Now, Denny did a couple of things. I think his most striking contributions came on the defensive end. It's not so much that he is a disruptor, although he did some of that, 2 steals, 2 blocks. Fantastic, obviously. And he spent some time away from the ball in the passing lanes and in help defense. But that's not really the key, because it didn't seem like the Blazers were relying that much on help and on off-ball defense like they did last year. Pretty much, to be frank, the Blazers either had some kind of mushy team defense last year or they had no defense. They did not have players capable of keeping their men in front of them in the half court. But Denny does that. Toumani does that. And with those two locked in place, all of a sudden, everybody else, or almost everybody else, looked better. One huge recipient on defense was Jeremy Grant. Now, we've always known that he's a pretty good defender, but that was lost in the last couple seasons simply because he did not have enough support. All of a sudden, Grant's on-ball defense looked much, much better. And lo and behold, even DeAndre Ayton, able to stay home on his man a little bit more because the forwards were in front of penetration. Even Ayton looked somewhat better. And that is an exciting development. You could tell immediately because Portland's interior defense was leaps and bounds better than it was last season. This was their Achilles heel last year. They were actually really good at defending the three-point arc because they had a lot of athletes who could get out and cover. But when the ball went inside, they were pitiful. Ayton was not a great one-on-one defender, and no matter who else came in the lane, they were too short, too slow, or not defensively apt. And therefore, teams just barbecued the Blazers inside the lane. Now, all of a sudden, not only did the ball have a man in front of it, but whenever secondary penetration came down the lane, more Blazers came down the lane with it because they weren't elsewhere. And that was super exciting. The thing that killed the Blazers last year was ball would penetrate, someone would have to come over to help the defender on the ball, and then all of a sudden somebody was wide open. And usually that resulted in some kind of short shot, often a layup, just an easy conversion. That did not happen, at least at the beginning of the game against the Warriors, and it was super exciting to see. Now, the Blazers still have some defensive problems. Their guards are still not great. Scoot Henderson, who came in off the bench, was okay, but kind of muted. Anthony Simons did not look great. And that's not exactly being solved. Also, the Blazers ended up giving up a lot of points in transition, which we're going to talk about in a second. And that was absolutely brutal. They also gave up a lot of rebounds. That was terrible and absolutely destroyed the defensive effort, because after a while they couldn't corral the ball. Golden State started getting offensive rebounds, putbacks, when they weren't just running it down Portland's throat. And there went the ball game, and it turned into a 30-plus point blowout. That said, that should not obscure the basic change in Portland's approach and in Portland's ability to guard inside. And that has a lot to do with Denny, and it has a lot to do with Tumani. And Portland fans should watch that combo, see if they remain in the starting lineup together, and celebrate how much better the defense is going to look if they do. Now, besides those two, well, I should say also, Tumani Camara showed confidence on his 3-point stroke. That was a big deal, because that is also a real sore spot with the Blazers, and it comes precisely after you get below their top two scorers. Jeremy Grant is a good 3-point shooter. Anthony Simons is decent. After that, it's kind of potluck, and it was a real problem last year because opponents were able to clog the lane. Now, this was still a problem versus the Warriors. It hasn't been solved yet. But if Tumani Camara can hit a 3-pointer with confidence, that goes a long way towards stretching the floor, at least in one direction, and that certainly helps. DeAndre Ayton also tried to do it. He's not going to be as successful. I'm a little nervous about that experiment, but at least he's out there trying. We'll see how it happens. As we said, Grant and Simons are good to go. I think Denny is okay. Denny's offense suffers, at least so far, when he's trying to take the ball in hand and score himself. He's a really good passer. He's pretty good on penetration, but he is not like a one-on-one scorer. He's not going to straight up break you down. If he could, he would be a literal superstar. Instead, he looks more like a really high-level role player who can probably hit an open three, can certainly get into the lane and pass, but is not going to break down this man and cause that kind of threat that would command a double team. But hey, good enough. That's what the Blazers got him for. And look what this does now. If Denny can hit a 3, and Tumani can hit a 3, and Grant can hit a 3, and Simons can hit a 3, that is everybody but DeAndre Ayton, and that's good enough for now. So that, at least in this starting lineup, looks positive as well. You've got to like those growth areas. 3-point shooting, a little bit, and interior defense, a little bit, will help Portland. Now, what went wrong? Not enough 3-point shooting, for one thing. The ball went too many places and there were too many misses. In fact, Denny would have had more assists probably had his teammates been able to hit a 3. And opponents are going to drag their defense down into the lane, and they're going to let the Blazers shoot until they prove they can. So let's hope that starting lineup efficiency not only holds up, but spreads to the bench a little bit when you're talking about 3-point shooting. What else went wrong? Well, Portland's emphasis on pace came back to bite them. Now, obviously, they are making a concerted effort to run more and to shoot faster. Denny was a big help with this, actually. He pushed the tempo. And the Blazers did a pretty good job at first, rebounding the ball, getting the ball outletted to someone who could handle it, and then getting that person in the middle of the floor and running the wings. That worked pretty well at first. A few things went wrong. First of all, again, that 3-point shooting. Because in the modern NBA, fast breaks are less about layups and more about having the defense go down to the lane to stop the layup and then kicking it out for a 3. The Blazers got the first part of that, but the second part didn't really work because when they kicked it out, they couldn't hit the shot. Also, when they had to go into their half-court offense off the break, they did shoot quickly, which pushes the pace, but they didn't shoot well, which is a problem, because that then turns into an easy and often long rebound for the other side, and then the other team gets to run it back on Portland. And this became the problem with this pace equation. This is why it didn't add up. Because Portland indeed pushed the pace down the floor, but when they shot quick and did not hit, then it got run back on them. And after a while, in the second quarter, they stopped getting back on defense quite so well. And by the second half, they were either gassed or had lost focus. I don't know what it was, but Golden State just ran it on them and ran it on them and ran it on them and made them regret that they even know how to spell the word pace, because the Warriors fast break them into oblivion. And Portland is going to have to watch out for this. It's all well and good to say we want to take advantage of our athletes and our offense by generating offense quicker. But you have to realize that the opponent is going to do the same. And if they are better at it than you, then you have just dealt yourself a losing hand. The Blazers have to be a little more measured, I think, and a little more careful and selective about how they shoot, not necessarily how they run. And I should say this too. Scoot Henderson, we're going to get to him in a minute, came off the bench, and the pace was not as quick when he was in as when the starters were in, and I'm surprised at that. The Blazers need him to use his athleticism to get the ball down the floor. Also, the Blazers need their guards to get back in defense. Neither one of those things happened. That was part of the problem. But it will be great if first unit, second unit, they do indeed get the ball down the floor quickly. But they need to be a little bit more measured in when and how they get up that shot, because shooting in the first 10 seconds doesn't necessarily help you that much if you are not hitting. It does generate more opportunities, which if your offense isn't great, percentage-wise, it might not help you, but volume-wise, it would, because if you're shooting 37%, you want to get up 100 shots and not 80 shots, because you will score correspondingly more points. I get that. But the problem is their percentages are bad enough to where the quick shooting is just biting them, because it's just leading to opposing chances. So, a little more measured in how they execute the half-court offense, I think, will help, but they should still get the ball down there quickly. Now, one of the questions then is what happens to DeAndre Ayton? He looked really good on the secondary break. When he got free, he was dunking and he was slashing into the middle of the lane. The Blazers hit him. It was great. In the actual half-court offense, he was not as good. Not only did he not hit his shots, he looked like there was no consistency where his shots were coming from. And this is part of the issue. We named all the Blazers perimeter players and their ability to shoot threes. Ayton is one of their few interior players. Jeremy Grant can do it too, and he did okay against the Warriors. But Ayton is really their bread and butter inside, but they're not buttering the bread. When he gets the ball seems kind of random. The frequency with which he gets the ball. Also, where he gets the ball seems kind of random as well. That sometimes he will be outside, sometimes he will be inside. There's not a lot of consistent set play going on there, either in the post-up or in the pick and roll. And therefore, the Blazers are having a hard time getting consistency inside, and they need that inside play in order to boost up their overall shooting percentage. And that's where they can take advantage of, if they don't get the quick shot, they might want to think about going to Ayton. Now, the problem is, Ayton, of course, is unique in that way, as we just said, among the Blazers. He's the only one who's going to get way far inside with the ball in his hand that's not just, cutting without it and slashing and trying to get a pass. So, look, the Blazers are going to have to adjust. They're going to have to spread that floor out. They're going to have to feed him where he can do something with the ball. They're going to have to do things in order to accentuate his offense if they want to take advantage of him. I think they would be well served in doing so, because without Ayton, their attack is not the same. And you could see it when Donovan Clingan came in. Now, he was okay, I thought, for his very first NBA game. He did a couple defensive things well. He even took advantage of the offense that he had which was actually pretty limited. But that's all right. That's what it should be. He should be getting offensive rebounds or catching within 3 feet of the bucket and trying to score. They shouldn't get fancy with him. But you could see the half-court offense materially change when the bench came in, when Ayton went out. So they're going to have to solve that problem about how to integrate Ayton with the other players who definitely do not score like he does. And his teammates are going to have to respect his ability to score inside and the Blazers' need for it. And they're going to have to work to get him clear and to feed him the ball and then make themselves open for the return pass. Let's talk about Scoot Henderson just a little bit, because that was a pretty big game from him to start out with. I would say, first of all, his confidence is high, and I think that is important. Now, at the beginning of last year, I thought he did okay, but he looked a little bewildered. He got in the groove for a little while, but then as the year progressed, he kind of fell in the ditch. And you could see him be tentative. He would turn the ball over. He didn't know what to do. He bounced back a little bit at the very end of the year. But overall, I would say the rookie season for Scoot Henderson was, at best, confusing. There was not as much confusion on Wednesday night. Now, it's not that Scoot did everything well. He didn't hit his 3-point shots. He did hit a little turnaround pull up farther out in the key. That was okay. But mostly what he did, there were two things that were important. First of all, he got to the hole. And when he got to the hole, he had a little trouble converting at first, but eventually got the hang of it. More importantly, though, he drew fouls. And he can absolutely feast on foul shots. That is something that Scoot Henderson can do well. He is a good free throw shooter. He has a sturdy body. He is able to absorb contact and get the shot up. And he can also get past defenders with his shoulders, if not with his feet, because he has a strong upper body. And he should be able to draw free throws most games. That is a huge, huge factor. He was 8 of 9 against the Warriors, and that accounted for about almost a little over a third of his 22 points. And it absolutely changed him from a bench player to an absolute bona fide scorer. And that was important. I loved seeing Scoot get the ball up near the rim. It was a big deal, and his confidence being high in those looks was a big deal as well. The other thing that he ended up doing was taking care of the ball pretty well. He did not turn it over. Now, he did not attempt a lot of daring passes, but still, that is progress, because the turnovers, 3.4 a game last year, were absolutely killing his team and making it impossible for him to continue playing at the point guard position. And Scoot is a point guard, period. He is not going to be anything else. So, him being able to take care of the ball was an absolutely welcome development, and we need to see if that continues. If it does, the Blazers are already a step ahead. If he can also develop at least a little bit of an outside shot, he will have most of what he needs to function and or prosper in his position. That is something the Trailblazers need. Anthony Simons did not look that good on Wednesday, and especially did not look that good in the point guard role. He was mostly off ball. Denny Avdia was handling the distribution duties. Jeremy Grant did a lot of work on the ball. Simons became a little bit of a catch and shoot guy, and when he wasn't, it's not like the offense or his shot looked that good. So we already have an asterisk by Simons in that ball handling and or point guard position. The Blazers need somebody to step up and fill that role. And if it's not Scoot, who is it going to be? So Henderson's development remains vitally important, critically important to the team. And it was good to see him take at least a couple small steps forward. What else? I thought Jeremy Grant, he did not shoot a good percentage, but he was playing like a number one option. He took the ball with confidence. He got into the lane. He shot the 3-point shot when open. I think there's nothing wrong with Jeremy. That's fine. DeAndre Ayton, we have already covered, as well as the rest of the starting lineup, and I thought Kamara was good. Klingon, again, he's going to need some development, and his offense is going to be an issue. The Blazers can't go 4-on-5. They're already struggling offensively. How well Klingon can begin to Robin Lopez's offense, basically. Develop one or two shots from one or two spots on the floor where he can score. That is going to be a key for him. I know Chauncey Billups can keep trotting him out there on defense, and given the likely record of the team and his need for development, probably will. But really, it's not a credible attempt until Klingon also is able to function on the offensive end. You know, I'm not sure that there's anybody else that we haven't mentioned that really was stellar. And I think, obviously, the Blazers need more games under their belt before we know them. But I would typify that first game as full of energy, at least for the first quarter, some of the first half, full of new developments, and having a little bit of promise, but still obviously in need of a lot of work at the drawing board and a lot more consistency. Now, the one guy we haven't talked about, guy who's injured shoulder, strain again, Shaedon Sharpe. And I think Shaedon Sharpe could make a huge difference in a couple ways. First of all, he's another potential defender on the perimeter, and his ability to cover space and to leap will help shut down the 3-point gap that the Blazers left versus the Warriors. And this is a problem that, oddly enough, they never solved. As I said, last year they were good at covering the 3-point arc. This game, they weren't. And they were leaving Warriors wide open from the jump, and Golden State missed until they didn't. And when Golden State stopped missing, when Buddy Hield caught on fire, and God forbid, Steph Curry caught on fire, there were big problems. The Blazers could not cover, and that's when they started getting blown out. I think that some of that will correct itself, but we have to see the balance between the new interior defense and the old perimeter defense come into line before we're confident in Portland's defense. I think Shaedon Sharpe will help with that. I think Shaedon Sharpe can also help as another guy who can get inside, maybe not exactly all the way to the lane, but far enough inside to pull up and convert shots, helping with that interior scoring that the Blazers need. I think having Sharpe out is a bigger loss than it seems, especially with Simons not doing too well in Game 1. So let's look forward to getting Shaedon back, and let's hope that his injuries do not become chronic. Now, this is the big deal for him. He played, 32 games last year, which wasn't near enough in a developmental season. The Blazers need to see him out on the floor. If he continues to be injured, you start to worry if this is going to be a durability issue, and if it is, oh boy, that puts the Blazers rebuild back even further after not being able to depend on Scoot, after not getting number 1 lottery picks and getting the prime players. This would be a serious blow if Shaedon can't play, so let's hope he does. Okay? So, what else to watch for? We have mentioned pace. We have mentioned rebounding, where the Warriors clobbered the Blazers after a certain point. That should not happen. The Blazers are tall and big now. They should be able to rebound. They should underline that. If there's no rebounding, there's no running. If there's no rebounding, the opponents are going to put back offensive rebound conversions, and that's going to further highlight how impoverished Portland's offense is. So rebounding will be a critical key. The Blazers need to fix that and to keep it up. 3-point shooting, we have also mentioned. They need it across the board. They need to find some help or consistency somewhere. Otherwise, opponents are just going to pack the lane. DeAndre Ayton will be forced further and further out on the floor. Shots from Jeremy Grant and Shaedon Sharpe will be contested. And you'll see guys like Scoot Henderson and or company lofting threes and clanking it. And again, without sufficient rebounding, those are going to turn into easy run-out opportunities for the other guys. So, pace, is it wise? And can they keep up integrity while pushing it? Rebounding, can they get tough on the boards and control them? and thus help control the pace? And then 3-point shooting, can they generate enough to keep their offense credible and the defense spread so they can score in more varieties of ways? Look at those three factors and you will understand, at least at the beginning of the season, what Portland is trying to accomplish. How successful they will be is an open question. They were not ultimately successful on opening night. And they're going to find a lot of problems because almost everybody in the Western Conference is better than they are. Almost everybody brings something that they're going to have a hard time dealing with. Either it's overwhelming size, overwhelming 3-point shooting, the ability to run. All of them can bring trouble to the Blazers, and they don't have real good solutions on any given night. They're simply going to have to take incremental steps to shore up the weak spots in their game bit by bit until they can continue to grow enough to where they have an established style of play and they're able to execute it and give themselves a chance. I don't think that's going to happen every night. I think they're going to lose a lot of games, but we want to see it happen some nights. And the reason why that matters is there is eventually going to be an end to this season 81 games from now. And after the end to that season will come another draft, and the Blazers are likely to have high draft position. And the one thing that they're still waiting for probably is their star. And the easiest way to get that star is through the draft. If they get to draft number 1 this time, super. If they get in the top 3, I think people are pretty high on at least 4 or 5 players in next year's draft. And so I think that it's all going to be to the good. But you want that guy to be able to come into something that is at least semi-established. In other words, players who are disciplined, who are giving effort, and who understand how to play, how they want to play, how to face up against an opponent on every given night. Whether or not they actually win, you can see them execute with consistency. Then you can add a rookie star to that and say, this is the match that set off the fuse of the dynamite that was already there. There's a big difference between that and just randomness and or tanking or whatever it is, where you bring in a rookie star and he's lighting a match and there's no fuse. And the dynamite isn't in a tube, it's just spread in different components all over the floor. You can strike that match all you want, nothing is going to light or explode. And that's what the Blazers have to worry about. The essential question for this season is, where are they in the rebuilding process? There's no doubt that they are rebuilding. Where are they in the rebuilding process? And the answers can vary all over the board. If Scoot Henderson develops and plays really well and becomes a starting point guard, if Shaedon Sharpe is healthy and can score, and if the forwards continue their good all-around play, then you might say the Blazers are at least complete with the initial stages of their rebound. They're just waiting for that big player to add to it in order for the rocket to launch. However, if Shaedon Sharpe is injured, if Scoot Henderson cannot play point guard adequately and ends up relegated to also ran status, if the team chemistry doesn't develop and everything falls apart, then the Blazers, in essence, have not started their rebuild yet. They are not ready to rebuild because they do not have the players in place, nor do they have any continuity or system in place to slot them into. And in that case, the rebuild will start with the next draft, which is a very different position than it already being 2 years old now since the drafting of Sharpe and Scoot and all of that. So that's the question that they have to answer. Are they even capable of being talked about as rebuilding right now? Or are we still looking at them and saying they are in need of a rebuild? That's also going to affect somewhat what you see happening between now and February with the trade deadline. Now, as I've said oftentimes in writing, the Blazers are under no pressure to trade anyone in particular. All the major players have at least 2 years left on their contract. Some have multiple. All of them are making fairly reasonable salaries given the current climate and the TV money that is coming in. Even the salaries that look slightly too expensive right now are going to seem like good deals in a couple years. So there's no financial pressure. There's no winning pressure. There's no time pressure for them to make a deal immediately if they don't want to. However, they still very much have players who are available for trade if the right deal comes along at any given point. The flip side to the no pressure coin is that there's no pressure to keep hardly any of these players either. And if they can get value for Jeremy Grant in a season where they might only win 20, if they can get value for Anthony Simons, if they feel like Anthony is not going to be able to be a point guard, is a little too short for the shooting guard position and a little too slight, and isn't going to produce enough points to make up for that, they can absolutely trade him. They are not bound to keep DeAndre Ayton anymore either if they decide he's too mercurial or he just doesn't fit with the rest of the team. He has 2 years left on his contract. Somebody is going to want him. They can probably develop or get future assets for him. Robert Williams III is the other name that is really sticking out. Now, he's young. He's only 26. But the Blazers have Donovan Clingan. Seems like 3 centers at this point might be one too many, especially if they really want to get Clingan a lot of reps. So look for the potential for the Blazers to trade either Ayton or Williams. Not, again, that they have to, but it's an open question. And those 4 players, Williams, Ayton, Simons, and Grant, I think are all in the green area for possible trades. There are other possibilities, but you have to ask whether the juice is going to be worth the squeeze. Obviously, they're not going to trade Denny. They just got him. Tumani is someone I imagine that they're pretty high on for a host of reasons, and his value, first of all, he doesn't have the salary that you can trade out for. The other team matching him would be sending back a minimum player, which doesn't do you any good. You like Tumani better, right? And I don't think that they'll want to make him a throw-in. So I think Denny and Tumani are not untouchable because nobody is, but, they're probably pretty secure. Shaedon Sharpe, who knows, but I guess they're going to keep him. Scoot Henderson, who knows, but he probably has another year of experimenting here so they see what they got. I mean, he was the 3rd overall pick a season ago. To bail out on him this early would be an admission that was a mistake, and that's hard to do. So I'm betting Scoot and Shaedon are okay. Guys like Jabari Walker can always be thrown in. Drop Reith, obviously, and look for those guys to provide ballast and or a little extra incentive for any trades for the bigger players that come along. I think Portland is primed with enough cheap contracts, enough young players, maybe enough draft picks if the haul is really good, although I see them acquiring draft picks rather than giving them away in trades, probably. But they have enough assets around the edges of a trade to make almost any kind of deal work. If they found someone that they really loved and they were able to make that deal, I imagine that they would have no hesitation in doing it. They are still building for probably 2 years down the road, not for today. So they have a little leeway in doing so. And the list of things that they need is pretty long. So, hey, look for trade talk to be active over the next few months and look for it to be pretty consistent surrounding those 4 players. Well, given one game of experience so far, that is where we will leave it, short and sweet. We will come back to you next week with a few more games under our belt, a few more observations and analysis. Enjoy watching the Blazers against the Pelicans and Kings and others this week. Watch those pace things, watch the rebounding, watch the 3-point shooting, watch to see what Scoot Henderson does and whether he's consistent, and enjoy Denny and Tumani. And we will see you again next week for more talk and more fun.
Are you a podcaster? Let's talk podcast hosting. Are you tired of your current podcast host? Need real support in a community that gets it? At Rogue Media Network, we offer top-tier podcast hosting services to help you thrive. From hosting and distribution to dedicated support, we've got you covered. Starting as low as $25 a month. Join our community of passionate podcasters today. Contact us at hello@roguemedianetwork.com.